Have you ever wondered why, like, when a massive global disruption hits, some companies just seem to effortlessly adapt? Rerouting shipments, shifting suppliers, barely missing a beat.
While others just completely collapse into chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I see all the time.
Right. And you might look at the survivors and assume they just have deeper pockets or maybe bigger, more advanced warehouses. But the secret isn't usually found in the physical buildings.
No, it's really not about the size of the truck fleet at all.
Exactly. It's this invisible blueprint running behind the scenes. And that is what industry insiders call a logistics framework. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, our mission is to unpack Module 9, Section A, which is all about designing this framework.
And it really is an invisible architecture. I mean, we get so caught up looking at the tangible things, the cargo ships, the automated distribution centers, the stuff you can touch.
Flashy stuff.
Yeah, the flashy stuff. But if the underlying logic connecting those physical assets is flawed, well, all the steel and concrete in the world won't save a company when the unexpected happens. The assets are just tools.
Right, and the framework is how you actually wield them. So to really set the stage for you listening, we have to draw a hard line right out of the gate. We have to differentiate between a logistics framework and network design.
It's a vital distinction. People confuse them constantly in this industry. When you hear network design, you should really just picture a map.
Okay, so just the geography.
Exactly. It's the mathematical process of selecting physical nodes and links. It's deciding, that you need 3 distribution centers, figuring out what cities they go in, mapping fuel-efficient routes.
So it's the physical footprint, just the hardware.
Yes. The logistics framework, on the other hand, is the rule book for how that footprint actually operates.
The software.
Right. It's the organizational methods, the internal reporting structures, the whole philosophy of how relationships are formed with external partners.
Yeah. So you could have the most beautifully optimized network design on paper, but if your logistics framework is rigid, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all. If your internal departments refuse to communicate or your supplier contracts are too stripped to allow for quick pivots, you will never utilize that network effectively.
Okay, so we'll run into the weeds on how a company builds this invisible rule book. And we should probably start from the inside out, right? Because before a company can move millions of products around the globe, it has to organize its own people.
Absolutely. The internal structure dictates what a business is actually capable of doing externally. And typically companies start with a classic functional structure.
Right, the traditional org chart. You have a procurement department, a manufacturing department, sales, finance, all in their own lanes.
Yeah, but historically, the actual logistics of moving goods is fragmented across all of those lanes. Procurement handles the physical supply coming in, while sales handles the physical distribution going out.
Which creates this massive vulnerability. It actually reminds me of a grain silo.
The grain silo. Yeah, it's a very apt way to look at it.
Well, think about it. A functional structure without a dedicated logistics team is just a series of towering grain silos. They are incredibly efficient at storing one very specific thing.
Right. Sales only cares about revenue. Manufacturing only cares about factory output.
Exactly. They are highly specialized, but it's terrible if you're trying to bake a cake together. You need all those ingredients to mix, but the people managing them are walled off from each other. They're only looking at their own metrics.
And those walls create a literal financial disaster. I mean, if manufacturing is only judged on keeping the assembly line moving, what are they going to do?
Hoard materials.
Exactly. They'll build up a mountain of raw inventory just to ensure they never halt production. Meanwhile, sales is only judged on delivery speed, so they stockpile finished goods all over the country.
Just to make sure they never miss a rapid delivery to a customer. Everyone is just padding their own stats.
Yeah, and you're hitting on the core vulnerability here, which is called sub-optimization. Because each silo controls its own budget, they optimize for themselves, not the whole company.
Wow. Okay, so they're both succeeding at their specific goals, but the company is bleeding cash because they're paying double the storage costs.
Precisely. Everyone is just hoarding safety stock in a vacuum.
So how does a company actually break those silos down? I mean, without just firing everyone and starting from scratch?
Well, the first major evolutionary step is creating a dedicated logistics functional area. You take physical supply away from procurement, you take distribution away from sales, and you unify it all.
Under one umbrella. One boss.
Exactly. By putting one leader in charge of the entire flow of materials, you can finally optimize the total cost. You stop sub-optimizing for departments and look at the bottom line.
But the research points out that even a dedicated logistics department isn't always enough, right? Like, especially in a really volatile market.
Right. which is why companies often have to move to something called a matrix structure. This is a cross-functional approach where you essentially overlay logistics across the traditional departments.
Okay, so a logistics manager has planning authority across the board, but the functional managers keep operational control. I have to admit, I struggle to see how this works in real life.
It can be messy, I won't lie.
I mean, if I'm in procurement and I have a functional boss telling me it hit one metric and a logistics boss giving me a different plan, isn't having two bosses just a recipe for absolute workplace chaos?
It absolutely can cause friction. You're introducing a layer of administrative complexity that requires crystal clear communication and really strong executive leadership to manage.
So why do it? Why take on that headache?
Because of what you get in return, which is agility. In a matrix structure, that planning role reorganizes processes from a wide systems-level perspective, but it keeps day-to-day operations accountable to specialized managers.
Oh, I see. So it forces integration?
Yes. You trade a little bit of administrative comfort for a massive amount of strategic agility. You achieve a level of maturity those isolated silos could never reach.
Okay, that makes sense. And if a company wants to push that agility even further, the research mentions they might adopt a process-oriented structure.
Yeah, that's where you ditch traditional departments entirely and build empowered, self-directed teams around a specific value chain, like an order management process owner.
Right, someone who sees an order through from the moment a customer clicks buy to the moment it hits their loading dock.
Exactly. And the ultimate, most fluid evolution of that is the network structure. This is a decentralized collection of independent units that self-organize around a common goal.
So no rigid chain of command at all.
Basically, no. It relies heavily on rapid, real-time information sharing. The brilliance of a network structure is that it allows a company to delay making irrevocable decisions.
Wait, what do you mean by irrevocable decisions?
Well, think about a massive production run of a brand new product.
Mm.
Once you turn those machines on and use up all your raw materials, you can't undo that.
Oh, right. You can't unbake the cake.
Exactly. If you guessed wrong about what the market wants, you're stuck with millions of dollars in useless inventory. But a network structure is so fast and communicative, you can wait until actual market demand is known before you commit.
That is fascinating. Okay, so once a company has dismantled its internal silos, got its people talking, and settled on an org structure, how does that change the physical movement of the boxes?
That brings us to operating arrangements. This is essentially how a business sets up its warehouses to match its strategy.
Okay, and the text mentions a few models for this.
Right. One of the most common is the echelon arrangement. You can think of this as staggered levels of supply chain nodes.
So like a cascading system.
Precisely. Imagine a massive central consolidation warehouse. That warehouse doesn't ship to customers. It ships large bulk loads to regional break bulk centers.
And then those regional centers sort it and send it to local retail stores.
You got it. It's an incredibly effective arrangement for major consumer product manufacturers or big box retailers who have vastly wide arrays of product lines.
But on the flip side, there's the direct model, which is all about stripping the network down to the fewest possible warehouses, right?
Yeah, you bypass the regional centers completely. You shipped directly from a central facility to the point of demand, like maybe just one major warehouse per parcel shipping zone to keep FedEx costs down.
Right. And naturally, most sophisticated companies don't just pick one or the other. They use a combined model.
Which is where things get really interesting. They mix echelon and direct to leverage a strategy called postponement. The goal is to delay moving items forward for as long as possible.
Keeping your options open again?
Always. So you take your fast-moving items, the stuff you know will sell quickly, and you push them into forward echelon warehouses, right down the street from the customer.
But your slow-moving or super expensive items, you hold those back in a central warehouse and ship them direct only when someone finally places an order. Makes total sense.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a fascinating contradiction here when it comes to business-to-business logistics.
I was just going to bring this up. Because if a company is selling parts for heavy B2B production equipment, they do the exact opposite of what you just described.
They really do. It completely flips the script.
Yeah, they put their slow-moving inventory in the local warehouses close to the customer, and they centralize their fast-moving inventory. Why on earth would you take up valuable local space with stuff that rarely sells?
It seems completely backward until you look at the economic reality of their specific customers. If you're selling, say, a specialized robotics arm for an auto plant, A slow-moving part is usually a highly critical component.
Right, and if that component breaks, the whole assembly line shuts down.
And a line down in automotive manufacturing can cost millions of dollars an hour.
Wow, so speed is literally money.
Exactly. The risk profile of that part is astronomically high. So that slow-moving part must be highly available locally to guarantee same-day service.
Because if it takes 3 days to ship it from another state, the customer loses millions and fires you.
Spot on. On the other hand, a fast-moving part in this scenario is usually just preventative maintenance stuff. Air filters, timing belts.
Things you know you'll need ahead of time.
Right, they're easily forecasted. The customer knows they need filters next month, so you can ship them direct from a central warehouse and save on transportation costs without risking a factory shutdown.
That is brilliant. It's not about how fast the part sells, it's about the financial risk that part carries.
Exactly. And to manage all these different arrangements, companies lean on the flexible model. This is where warehouses are linked by advanced IT systems and share workloads dynamically.
So if a VIP customer needs something and the local warehouse is out, the system automatically triggers a cross-stocking maneuver or ships from further away.
Right, they just eat the extra freight cost to avoid a back order. But you can only execute that if your logistics framework allows for it. You need real-time inventory visibility across all locations.
Which perfectly transitions us to how internal teams interact with the outside world. How did these teams actually talk to their suppliers and corporate buyers?
Well, the research outlines a radical shift here, moving from what they call a bow tie model to a diamond model. It's one of the most powerful visual concepts in supply chain design.
Okay, paint a picture for us. What is the bow tie?
Historically, the relationship between a supplier and a buyer looked exactly like a bow tie. You have an entire company of people on the supplier side, marketing, finance, logistics, but all their communication tapers down to a single point of contact.
The salesperson.
Yes, the salesperson. And that salesperson talks to a single buyer on the customer side. And then that buyer disseminates the info out to their entire company.
It's the ultimate bottleneck. It's essentially a corporate game of telephone, right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Like marketing on the supplier side tells the salesperson something crucial, who tells the buyer, who then tries to explain it to the distribution team on the other side. By the time the message gets there, the context is totally lost.
It's completely distorted. There's a great example in the text of how this goes wrong. Imagine marketing and sales decide to launch a massive growth campaign. They hype up the product and increase manufacturing output.
But because they're in silos, they completely ignore logistics.
A classic, very expensive misstep.
Right. So suddenly, record product rolls off the line, and the logistics manager is standing there saying, we have absolutely zero warehouse space for this.
And no extra freight capacity booked. So they have to sign incredibly expensive last-minute spot contracts for emergency storage.
And all the profit from that brilliant marketing campaign just goes up in smoke. It's vaporized by emergency logistics costs.
And that right there is exactly why modern supply chains require flipping that bow tie inside out to create a diamond shape.
Okay, so how does the diamond work?
You eliminate the single bottleneck and establish multiple direct peer-to-peer interactions between the two companies. The supplier's IT department talks directly to the customer's IT department.
Finance talks to finance, logistics to logistics. It feels way more like a neural network than a traditional corporate hierarchy.
It behaves like one, too. When you link functions directly like that, you create true supply chain synchronization. The data flows freely. And this is arguably the single best defense against the bullwhip effect.
Let's break down the bullwhip effect because it is such a critical concept.
Right.
How does a diamond relationship actually stop it?
Well, think about the mechanics of the bullwhip in a traditional bow tie setup. Say a retailer sells 10 extra units of a product 1 week.
Just a tiny bump.
Right. But the retail buyer sees that uptick and orders 20 extra units from the distributor just to be safe.
Padding the order.
Exactly. Then the distributor sees an order for 20, assumes demand is spiking, and orders 40 from the manufacturer so they don't stock out.
And then the manufacturer panics and buys enough raw material to build 80. So a tiny 10-unit ripple at the register turns into a massive 80-unit tsunami at the factory.
Yes. And it happens because every link in the chain is guessing. They're reacting to delayed, distorted orders instead of actual consumer behavior.
But in a diamond structure, the manufacturer's IT system is directly integrated with the retailer's point of sale, right?
Exactly. The manufacturer sees those 10 units sell at the exact same moment the retailer does. There's no guessing, no telephone game. They adjust production to match actual demand in real time. The whip never cracks.
Wow. Okay, so if companies are linking up this deeply, how far does that collaboration actually go? The research outlines the evolution of relationship levels, starting with simple transactional relationships.
Right, which is just buying a standard component off the shelf. Then it moves to ongoing relationships, like the multi-year contracts for dedicated warehouse space.
And then you reach the leader-follower dynamic, where a massive entity, like a dominant global retailer, starts dictating strategy to smaller suppliers.
Yeah, they act as a channel master. But past that, you enter strategic alliances, where companies actually share proprietary info and joint investments.
And the ultimate expression of this is the enterprise extension, right? Where two separate organizations integrate so tightly, they basically operate as one company.
Yes. Think of how tightly tech companies like Apple or Dell integrate with their key component suppliers. They blend their corporate cultures and IT systems to the point where it's incredibly difficult to tell where the buyer ends and the supplier begins.
And often, the entities facilitating this deep integration are logistics service providers, or LSPs. We should definitely draw a line between the two main types mentioned, 3PLs and 4PLs.
It's an important distinction. A 3PL, a third-party logistics provider, is typically tactical.
Oh, yeah.
You hire them to execute a specific function like, manage this warehouse or move these pallets.
But a 4PL is viewed as a true strategic partner.
Right. A fourth-party logistics provider operates at a much higher level. They design the entire global network that the box moves through, they provide the IT platforms, and they often manage multiple 3PLs on behalf of the client.
And because 4PLs sit at the center of this huge web of data, they can facilitate something truly wild: horizontal collaboration.
Yes, which sounds crazy at first.
It really does. It's when direct competitors actually work together on their logistics. The research highlights Kimberly-Clark and Unilever, massive, fierce rivals. But they looked at their data and realized they were both dispatching half-empty trucks to the exact same retail stores.
So they just joined forces.
It's like frenemies carpooling to the same party. They actually shared a consolidation warehouse and put their competing products on the exact same trucks.
And by doing that, they increased delivery frequency to the retailers and significantly reduced their own transport costs.
It sounds so shocking to work with a bitter rival like that.
It does, but if you look at the brutal economic math, it makes perfect sense. To a large extent, the physical movement of goods is just a pure commodity.
Right, a truck is a truck.
Exactly. Whether it's carrying your shampoo or your competitor's shampoo, it burns the same amount of diesel. If your corporate cultures are compatible enough and your customer overlap is high, the cost reduction is just too massive to ignore.
I imagine you need some pretty strict contractual protections for your data, though.
Oh, absolutely. But the efficiency gains usually outweigh the risks.
So that's horizontal. Beyond that, you have vertical collaboration, which is how a company collaborates up and down its own supply chain. The research points to a few powerful methods to stop the guessing game here.
Right. First, there is quick response, or QR. It's heavily used in apparel. It relies on small, frequent batches and incredibly fast factory changeovers to eliminate excess inventory.
It's the engine that makes fast fashion possible, basically.
Yeah. Then there is CPFR, collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment. This directly addresses the guessing game we talked about with the bullwhip.
So the manufacturer and retailer literally sit down together to plan out seasonal events.
Yes. They agree on product mixes and build forecasts collaboratively using shared consumer data instead of isolated forecasts in their own silos.
And an even deeper level is VMI, vendor-managed inventory. In a traditional setup, the retailer tracks their own inventory and sends a PO when they run low. But with VMI, the supplier takes responsibility for restocking the shelves.
The retailer doesn't even place an order. The supplier has direct access to the inventory data and sends product exactly when it's needed. It almost entirely eliminates the bullwhip effect because the supplier is looking right at the shelf.
Wow. And the most advanced version of this is DDM, right? Demand-driven methodology. How does DDM differ from something like CPFR?
It differs by largely abandoning the concept of the forecast entirely.
Wait, really? No forecasting?
Well, let's be honest, even a collaborative forecast is still just an educated guess about the future. DDM doesn't rely on what a spreadsheet predicts will happen 6 months from now. Instead, it uses actual, real-time customer demand signals to dynamically adjust inventory.
So you're only pulling raw materials based on what is being consumed today, right now.
Exactly. But you can only pull off DDM if your organizational structure, your operating arrangements, and your relationships are built to support that intense level of speed and visibility.
Which really brings this whole journey full circle for you listening. A logistics framework is far more than a map of distribution centers or a rigid org chart. It is the living, breathing rulebook of a supply chain.
It dictates how flexibly a business can respond to a rapidly changing world. If your internal teams are locked in silos, or your external relationships are bottlenecked through a bow-tie structure, you will break the moment a disruption hits.
But if a company designs a framework built on integration and trust, moving to diamond relationships and enterprise extensions, they don't just survive those disruptions.
No, they turn that agility into a massive competitive advantage, while their slower rivals are still trying to figure out what went wrong.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to mull over. We've explored how deeply integrated these relationships are becoming, right? With methodologies like DDM and advanced AI allowing for perfect, real-time data sharing.
It's moving incredibly fast.
It is. So as this digital transformation accelerates and supply chains become perfectly synchronized, will traditional corporate boundaries eventually disappear altogether? Decades from now, will we even have distinct companies collaborating? Or will the logistics framework evolve us into one massive, automated, global enterprise extension where the lines between supplier, manufacturer, and retailer just completely vanish?
It raises a fascinating question about the future of business itself. If the data flows seamlessly and operations are perfectly blended, the legal borders between organizations might just become an archaic technicality.
Something to think about the next time you see a delivery truck roll by, or wonder how that package arrived at your door so quickly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the logistics framework. Keep questioning the structures around you, and we'll catch you next time.